Okay, let's unpack this. The Laotian Civil War. Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today really is to give you a shortcut, a way to get properly informed on a critical piece of history. One that's, well, often overlooked. We're talking about the period from about 1959, maybe, up to 1975, sometimes called the Laotian Revolution.
Right.
But more often, and I think more tellingly, known as the Secret War. So today, we're going to pull out the key nuggets from our sources. Why was it fought? Who is actually involved? And why does it still matter? Its significance is surprising.
It really is. And that term Secret War, it's not just some label historians stuck on later. It was the reality. People involved used it. American Special Forces, the CIA guys, Hmong veterans too. Laos essentially became this, well, hidden battlefield, a secret front for different sides in the bigger Vietnam War.
Right.
It really shows how much the Cold War just permeated everything in Southeast Asia. What's fascinating here is how much crucial history unfolded, almost completely out of plain sight.
And the core conflict itself,
Mm-hmm.
it was primarily between the communist Pathet Lao,
Mm-hmm.
who largely traced their ethnicity to Laotian groups in North Vietnam
Right.
and the Royal Lao Government.
Yeah.
But the critical thing, and you touched on this, is that both sides were getting major backup from the Cold War superpowers.
Absolutely. External support was key.
So where do we trace the beginnings? How did this whole thing kick off? You can really point back to October 22nd, 1953. There was this French law treaty of amity and association.
Okay.
And this treaty saw France hand back most of its remaining power to the Royal Lao Government. And this is a big, but not control over the military.
Ah, okay. That's crucial.
It really is. And here's where it gets interesting. A major anti-colonial group, the Laosara, this nationalist armed force,
Yeah.
they weren't part of signing this treaty.
They were left out.
Completely absent. It almost feels like laying the groundwork for future trouble, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it shows how decolonization, well, it often just slid right into Cold War proxy fights.
Yeah.
That treaty made Laos technically independent, part of the French Union.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it basically lit a fire under these intense internal political struggles.
So it didn't solve things, it just shifted the conflict.
Pretty much. And after that treaty, you basically saw three main political groups emerge. Three factions, really.
Okay.
You had the neutralists. Prince Suvarnabhumi was their leader. They kind of wanted to keep Laos out of the whole East-West fight.
Understandable.
Then the right wing, more aligned with the West, led by Prince Baon of Champasak.
Right.
And then the left wing. This was the Lao Patriotic Front, basically the Pathet Lao's political arm, communist-backed, led by Prince Siphanovong and also Kaesum Phambijin, who later became prime minister.
So you've got these clear internal
There's
divisions.
deep divisions, which raises a really important question. How did these local fights get so tangled up with, the U.S., the Soviet Union, China, Vietnam?
Yeah. How did the outside forces really plug into these existing splits? What,
Oh.
what were they actually doing beyond just sending money or weapons?
Well, initially it was about finding allies who lined up with our side.
Okay.
So the U.S., mainly through the CIA, poured a lot of resources, training, support into the Royal Lao Army. They saw them as the dam against communism spreading.
Right, the domino theory in action.
Exactly. And on the flip side, North Vietnam gave massive support to the Pathet Lao, not just guns and ammo, but advisors, political cadres, intelligence, even their own troops fighting alongside them.
So direct involvement.
Oh, yeah, significant direct involvement. Each big power basically picked their team and amplified the existing tensions. It turned what could have been maybe a contained political struggle into this incredibly complex, internationalized war.
Which explains why trying to form a stable coalition government was so difficult.
Precisely.
They did eventually manage a three-party government in Vientiane, right? But it sounds like it was always on shaky ground.
Extremely shaky, a real balancing act, reflecting just how deep those divisions went. It couldn't really last.
And that inherent instability, that failure to unify, I guess that's when the military conflict really ramps up.
That's when it truly explodes, yeah.
And it wasn't just Laotians fighting Laotians anymore. The fighting pulled in the North Vietnamese Army directly.
Heavily involved.
American forces, though often covertly.
Yes, air power, special forces, CIA operatives.
The Thai Army, too.
Yes, Thai volunteers, often U.S.-backed, fighting against the communists.
And the South Vietnamese Army, ARVN, also operated inside Laos at times.
Correct. So you had direct clashes, but also a huge amount of guerrilla warfare. It became central to the whole Indochina conflict.
Not just a sideshow at all.
Not at all. And strategically, the geography was key. One major goal for everyone was controlling the Laotian panhandle, that southern strip of the country.
Why was that so important?
Because the North Vietnamese Army managed to secure control over large parts of it, and they turned it into the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
The main supply route.
Exactly. The logistical superhighway, you could call it, running south, it was vital for their war effort in South Vietnam. A staging ground, a supply line, all running through supposedly neutral Laos.
Wow. The scale of that happening in secret.
It's quite staggering when you think about it.
And you mentioned the panhandle, but there was another major area of really intense fighting, wasn't there? The Plain of Jars.
Yes, Thung Hai Hin, the Plain of Jars.
What was significant about that area?
Well, it's this large strategic plateau in north-central Laos. Control shifted back and forth constantly, and because of its strategic value, it became just unbelievably heavily bombed, particularly by the U.S.
One of the most bombed places on Earth, I've read.
Sadly, yes, a terrifying distinction. It's a stark reminder of the sheer intensity of this supposedly secret war. The amount of unexploded bombs still there today. It's horrifying.
A devastating legacy. Truly. So fast forward, the war grinds on for years. How does it end?
Well, it ends in 1975, same year as the fall of Saigon and Phnom Penh. The North Vietnamese Army and the Pathet Lao achieve victory. They take control of the country.
It was considered one of the biggest communist victories that year, right, in the whole region.
Absolutely. A
Right.
huge win for them in Indochina, which makes the secret part even more, well, striking.
Yeah.
You have this pivotal conflict, a major communist victory, and yet much of the world barely knew it was happening.
That secrecy must have had long-term consequences for Laos itself.
Immense consequences. It shaped everything afterwards. The country's isolation, its development, the political landscape. The fact that the suffering and the fighting were largely invisible meant less international attention, less aid later on. It really raises that question. What are the long-term ripples when a war, even a decisive one, stays secret?
So, reflecting on all this, what does this secret history really tell us today? This whole deep dive into the Laotian Civil War, it's clearly more than just filling in a blank spot in Cold War history.
Oh, much more.
It feels like a powerful example of how global power struggles can just devastate smaller nations, often with these lasting scars that remain hidden from view.
Exactly. If you connect this to the bigger picture, the Laotian Civil War is this stark reminder. History is messy, it's complex, it's way more interconnected than the simple stories we often get. It really forces you to think about how actions by major powers, superpowers, how those ripples can create absolute tidal waves in places that seem far away,
Yeah.
shaping entire countries, millions of lives, often without the world really paying attention.
A sobering thought. We really hope this deep dive prompts you, our listener, to keep digging. Keep looking for those hidden stories, those nuanced perspectives. They genuinely enrich our understanding of the world. Thank you for joining us on this truly deep dive.